Here's my daily question.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
Which is best? Reading with some tea when it's raining, or reading with some hot cocoa when it's snowing?
Rain.
Rain?
Rain is my preference. Yep.
Oh, I thought we were going to be on the same page and it was going to be a boring conversation here.
I think mine, specifically why I would choose rain, is because snow doesn't make a sound and rain does when it falls. And I like to listen to lo-fi. I'll even listen to lo-fi music that has rain in it when I'm reading. And snow is just that perfect little silent,
Yeah, it's like an insulated sound, which is why I think I like it, because you don't hear echoes of anything. Noises are just...
But that's when you're outside in it. I don't feel like it's the same when you're indoors and it's snowing outside.
I feel like it feels that way to me, though. If we're sitting in our library,
Sure.
I think oftentimes I can hear just the lack of reverberation or the lack of echo of everything outside and inside a little bit.
Do you listen to anything when you read? Like if you get to just like sit in a room by yourself and read, do you listen to anything?
I would listen to something. Normally I would be listening to like medieval lo-fi or something like that, or fantasy soundtracks. But something about the snow, it just...
Interesting. And hot cocoa. You would choose hot cocoa.
Okay, so maybe I wouldn't choose hot cocoa. I'd choose coffee or something, or chai.
Yeah, chai sounds good.
Chai would be a good replacement.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're talking about our favorite foods in books.
Yeah.
As a way of talking about books that we love. Do you want to start or do you want me to start? Because I've got some passages of real books that I took off of our shelf.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I just used my memory.
Smart.
I don't have passages to read.
Well, and my memory is going to fail me at some point during this episode, and I'm going to need the help of the listeners because it's bothering me so badly.
To remember something specific from a book, or like, where was this one book with this one thing?
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's see. Maybe I'll just start with one of my favorite books.
Okay.
And what I want to eat every time I read it.
Okay.
And I think I would actually label this as my all-time favorite book. I haven't read it in a long time, but I have read it at least 10 times. And it is a book for kids, but it's a chapter book. So at least it's not like a picture book. But the book is Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. And in that book, the girl and the dog, Winn-Dixie, eat a lot of peanut butter sandwiches. Or like Winn-Dixie eats a lot of peanut butter, and it just always makes me want it.
Interesting.
And like just peanut butter, not jelly.
Yeah.
Peanut butter sandwich.
I think I'm going to love this conversation because already I'm realizing a benefit of it. As you bring up Winn-Dixie, I've read it. I can't think of any food that exists in that book.
I know. Honestly, as we were prepping for this, I was like, I'm sure these people consumed something in this book. But I think it might be kind of that thing of like, a lot of authors don't bring up the fact that their characters are going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of similar sometimes with food, that they're just like, this isn't an important part of the story, so they're not going to bring up food. Because I was like, I've read a lot of these books as I'm looking in our shelves, but I was like, I don't know that they ate anything.
Yeah, and I think it's random which books the food feels highlighted in. So I have one book that I'm going to bring out that feels like it's almost all about food.
Okay.
But then others where it, like Dune is one of them. And I searched high and low to find the descriptions of spice in Dune.
Yeah.
At some point, they refer to it as smelling like cinnamon and having the same ruddy appearance as cinnamon.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find it in the book. But I remember that being the thing that drove me while I was reading Dune, where I would put cinnamon in my coffee as I was reading. And I just wanted cinnamon as I was doing it because it felt immersive.
Yeah.
It felt in there. And it's definitely not about food because it's this drug that I think is supposed to be like an essential oil close to of it, cinnamon. But to me, it had this real taste experience for me as I was reading it.
Yeah.
And so I think that comes out in some of those books where peanut butter, like it may be brought up, but some of the way that it's brought up feels very visceral.
Yeah. Well, and I'm really hoping that I got that right because it really has been a long time, but I swear there's something about Winn-Dixie being covered in peanut butter.
I think you're
and
right.
him eating peanut butter sandwiches. So I'm really hoping, but already this is sparking like I think it'd be so fun to host a party where you have different dishes of like, here's cinnamon coffee from Dune and
Oh,
here's peanut
yeah.
butter sandwiches from Because of Winn-Dixie, and just host a book eating party.
I would love that.
I think that sounds so
That sounds
fun.
like so much
We
fun.
should just do a combo birthday party
Heck
for
yeah.
us.
Let's do it, where
Yeah.
everybody has to bring a book food.
Yeah. Of like,
I'm so down.
that sounds amazing.
I'm so down.
So if you're, the 5 friends of ours that listen to this podcast, start thinking of your foods now.
I want to read one because I feel like it's a quintessential example of this whole topic. So if you've ever read the Little House on the Prairie books,
Which I haven't.
You haven't?
Yeah, and I also learned that the series is available on Amazon Prime.
Oh, we should watch that sometime. We had to, because my sisters loved watching it. My mom did too.
Well, I love period things.
We watched it all the time. I think I've probably seen the series 3 times.
Okay.
And
you were watching it on VHS as you were driving
and then
somewhere.
DVDs eventually.
They were okay, great. Good for you guys.
Yeah, we did get an upgrade. But my mom would also read the books to us.
I love that. I love being read too.
The books, she just has this way of writing about the food that would always make my mom hungry. And I still remember it too. So I'm going to read 2 passages. This is from Farmer Boy. The kitchen was full of delicious smells. Newly baked bread was cooling, frosted cakes and cookies, and minced pies and pumpkin pies filled the pantry shelves. Cranberries bubbled on the stove. Mother was making dressing for the goose. And then the next passage.
It's January and I want Thanksgiving food now.
I know, right? All the things that she's describing, it's really hard not to.
It also makes me want like a Natchitoches meat pie. That sounds so good.
He looked at the crisp, crackling little pig lying on the blue platter with an apple in its mouth. He looked at the fat roast goose, the drumsticks sticking up, and the edges of dressing curling out. The sound of Father's knife sharpening on the whetstone made him even hungrier. He looked at the big bowl of cranberry jelly and at the fluffy mountain of mashed potatoes with melting butter trickling down it. He looked at the heap of mashed turnips and the golden baked squash and the pale fried parsnips. He swallowed hard and tried not to look anymore. He couldn't help seeing the fried apples and onions and the candied carrots. He couldn't help gazing at the triangles of pie waiting by his plate, the spicy pumpkin pie, the melting cream pie, the rich dark mince oozing from between the mince pie's flaky crusts. He squeezed his hands together between his knees. He had to sit silent and wait, but he felt aching and hollow inside. Which is just, if that doesn't induce hunger, I don't know what will. So much food.
Seriously. I think the only other maybe like big descriptive one I have outside of just like a handful of like, I remember these pieces from these books, is a book that you and I both read and we loved, but it made us so hungry. And it's Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. And in that book, Vera makes Chinese food super often and makes tea because she owns a tea shop. And it just makes you want to like drink loose leaf tea and find
some dumplings.
Yeah, all the dumplings and just use chopsticks for everything. And specifically with the tea, you want to like find the healing powers of like, oh, this kind of tea will give you a clear mind, or this tea will clear up your snotty nose or whatever. Just like, I really want to find a tea shop.
Yeah, that book was so good. And I think it did a good job too of it. The food was very much described, but it was part of the story. It was an essential part of the story.
Yeah.
I think that happens in Laura Wilder's books too, where a lot of the work is towards the food and the food has this real significance to the narrative.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was true in Vera Wang.
Because the food brings them together.
Food brings them together. And I think when that happens, you have to describe the food in a lot of detail. And I think that's something that brings up those cravings. And then there's other ones where it's just they randomly mention this thing,
And
and
you're
now I
like,
can't get it
that
out of my
sounds
head.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's another one of yours?
I have another one is Little House on, or not Little House. That was the other one. Little Women.
Okay.
So there's two. So this is where my brain is failing me, and it's frustrated me all morning.
Okay.
When I think about Little Women,
Yeah.
one of the foods that comes up is hot chocolate. And I think they called it French chocolate, but I think I just have this picture in my mind of it's always snowing in Little Women. That's how it feels, at least. And sometime around Christmas, them having hot cocoa or French chocolate or something like that, because that's just the imagery that pops up in my head.
Yeah.
Cannot for the life of me find where it is in the books.
The only, I think I listened to Little Women, but I listened to it on my Sleepy Bookshelf podcast. So it's the one that like puts me to sleep. And I think I've watched, a version of it before. But the only food I remember from Little Women is when they like make their whole Christmas dinner and then end up bringing it to a poor family.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the only part I remember.
So the part that I remember is blancmange, which is probably not how you pronounce it, but that's how I'm going to go with it. And I remember it really vividly because it's what Joe brings to Lori.
Okay.
When he's sick, I think. And it helps him feel better. And it's part of that flirty, like, interest, right? But then I found the passage where it is, and literally all it says is, it so happened that Beth's funny loan was just the thing, for in laughing over the kits, Lori forgot his bashfulness and grew sociable at once. That looks too pretty to eat, he said, smiling with pleasure, as Joe uncovered the dish and showed the blancmange, surrounded by a garland of green leaves and the scarlet flowers of Amy's pet geranium.
What is blancmange?
Yeah, so I had to look it up because I remember, I think this is probably one of those books that I read in homeschool because my mom would read to us all the time.
Yeah.
And so we probably looked it up because in my head, it's not too far off. So it's essentially like a white pudding. So think like almost like a Jell-O, but it's pudding. And it's covered in...
Why didn't you just say it's pudding? Why did you have to say it's like Jell-O?
No, because like in a shape. Because it stands on
so it's like
own.
A molded
Yeah, it's like
thing.
a molded pudding.
Sorry. I just was like...
The visual
it's
in my
like
head.
Jell-O, but it's pudding.
I'm just frustrated that you can't see what I'm seeing as I'm reading it.
Okay, so it's like a Jell-O mold.
Yeah, it's like a Jell-O mold sitting on a plate.
Pudding.
And there's like berries and flowers all over it. So it's like garnished with all of this beautiful, bright colors on a white pudding.
That sounds good.
And I always wanted it, but I feel like it would be a Turkish delight situation.
Yeah.
Where you read Chronicles of Narnia.
And you're like, Turkish delight, it's got to be so amazing.
And then you have it.
And you're like,
it's a very specific kind of treat, I guess.
I think that one frustrates. Like, why did C.S. Lewis choose that? Like, why wouldn't he choose something that's like actually good?
Maybe he wanted to imagine a world where it was.
Maybe he thought it was good.
Maybe he did. Or maybe we've just had really bad Turkish delight.
I've never actually had it. I've only heard it. I've only heard your experience of it, and I just assume that it's terrible.
That's so funny. You are my ride or die.
That's right. I'll celebrate anything of yours. Okay, I'm trying to think of some classics, but I don't want to go through them too quickly. But I think you'll resonate with me on this one. Harry Potter and butterbeer.
Oh, butterbeer.
Or more specifically, so I think maybe you would prefer the butterbeer because I think it's explained in the book as tasting like butterscotch. And I don't really love butterscotch. But what I do love and want some of are the chocolate frogs.
Oh, I was thinking about putting that on my list.
Yeah, I didn't think about the jelly beans because they actually make those and I think they're actually kind of gross.
Yeah.
Because there's like booger flavored ones or whatever. And I'm like, I could taste my own boogers, thanks. I don't need to eat candy that tastes like that. I'm not going to.
I can taste my own boogers, thanks.
I don't need to eat a jelly bean like that.
It's so funny.
But I do want to try a chocolate frog.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind getting a Dumbledore card.
Oh, for sure.
Do they make those? Can you buy them?
I'm sure.
We need to go to Universal.
I was about to say, I'm sure they make them there.
Okay.
When we go.
Yes.
We'll get those.
When our kids get through the series, because they'll be like,
yes,
older at that time. That'd be so fun.
That would be super fun.
I would love that. Okay. Anything else from Harry Potter that sticks out?
No, butterbeer and chocolate frogs was all that I could really come up with. There are some descriptors of food, especially at the banquets that they have. I just don't think J.K. Rowling writes about food in a way that feels like it induces that same level of hunger, like a Laura Wilder, right? Where
it's like 5 paragraphs on food. Does Lord of the Rings do that?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So one of them is when Merry and Pippin are sitting on the walls of Isengard. They found some salted pork, but then they were also smoking tobacco pipes. And so even in the movie, in the extended version, you can see them eating salted pork and smoking at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that experience just feels so visceral and so desirable to me.
We just need my dad to like make the salted pork. He probably would actually be up for that.
His bacon is probably almost the same. Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is more from the movie, but they talk about it a little bit in the book, so I'm gonna count it. But I watched Lord of the Rings in 2003, probably. It's like a year after it came out. And I was probably 10. But seeing Pippin get a pint of beer and have all of the foam on top, I knew nothing about beer. I had no idea what it was supposed to look like. I didn't know that was the head of the beer, any of that. But there's just something about that visual in a cast iron cup. Just brings it out. Like, I want that. Yeah. And I don't know if any beer I ever have will ever live up to my expectation of what I read saw in the movie.
Yeah. Huh.
Which I think is true of some of these things, where if I was to make blancmange, we'd probably taste it and be like,
I bet you I could find a way to make that taste real good.
Just add some sugar.
Well, yeah, which is what we need right now. But like, I mean, I can look it up, but if it's just like vanilla pudding and berries, I bet you that'd be real yummy.
It's an English pudding.
Which is more like if I did it with vanilla pudding, it would taste real yummy.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
We'll make it good. But yeah, even just like making butterbeer, you'd be like, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah, because especially there was a study done that mapped the brain as it was reading and found that the way that we read is not just looking at letters, putting them together into words, and then understanding the meaning of that word. It's actually understanding the meaning of the sentence and associating it to known experiences. So if an author writes about the sound of a bubbling creek near you and the wind on the grass, your brain doesn't just picture what that means or assimilate the information. It actually goes into your archives and pulls out and puts to your experience of grass and creeks and all of those things.
But what if you don't have any?
So if you don't have any,
never been to a creek
it has to associate with the closest thing it can. And so that's why you might have things like Dune, where they're describing spice and all you're thinking is cinnamon because that's the closest thing and that's what it's latched onto.
Okay.
Or sometimes when you read something, especially as a kid, because I felt like I did this all the time, I would read something. Let's say it's like the blancmange, right? I have no idea what that is, but my brain comes up with a picture to match what I think that would probably be based on the description, right? Yeah. And so it could be a bowl of porridge that has a garnish of berries on it, right? Yeah. And then a flower in the middle. And that's what my brain goes to.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's super dissatisfying when you watch a show and you're like, oh, the Ninja Turtles are eating pizza.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I could eat that pizza. And then you get pizza and you're like, it doesn't taste like the Ninja Turtles pizza.
Yeah, because I know what that's supposed to taste like.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you could get a Krabby Patty, and I think technically Wendy's sells them now.
Yeah, they had them for a bit.
But you know it won't taste like a Krabby Patty, because I don't know what it tastes like, but it doesn't taste like that.
Exactly. I bet you the same is true for your peanut butter. No, you think that one's spot on?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably have to make it on white bread, which is like sacrilegious in this house. But in order to, peanut butter tastes like peanut butter.
See, I think I have a different reading profile of peanut butter than I do a taste of peanut butter. I don't know why, but I know that one for sure for me, where people can romanticize peanut butter.
Yeah.
And I think I have this romanticized version of peanut butter in my head.
Yeah.
And then I go to taste peanut butter and it's like tasting artificial banana.
Weird.
Right?
You don't like peanut butter?
No, I do like peanut butter, but I like it a lot more in my head, I guess.
I love peanut butter. Okay, I have a few more.
Okay.
So this is funny because you were like, let's do it based off of books and not movies. But I've never read the book. I've only seen the movie, but the book exists, so I'm still going to use it.
Great, we'll count it.
Holes. When they're eating onions and peach jam.
Yep.
I just, like, I've never wanted to eat a raw onion. Except for that. Like, after seeing that and the peach jam, like, it just looks so amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever had a sweet onion, but I know they exist. And I watched a video on how they made the prop, because it was actually apples that they were eating, wrapped in onion skin. Right?
That's cool.
Does that mess it up for you?
No, but it makes sense for the sound.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I really don't feel like eating an onion would sound like that.
I mean, it probably
But eating an apple, that
yeah.
makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. But you could easily convince me to eat a raw onion after watching that movie.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Just for the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like taking a spoon to some jam.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't need to put it on anything, just like spoon it in.
Yeah.
Or like they like guzzle it like a cup.
Yeah. Or there's times where I think the plateware in books is like the meaningful part. Like even in the Laura Wilder one, she talks about like on a blue platter.
Oh,
right?
sure.
And I can picture it. It's the like
if it's not on a blue platter, it won't taste the same. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you see it in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see it.
Right? And I think there's sometimes where I almost want to just pursue the plateware for a meal in order to match. Yeah. Like a while ago, Peter and I hosted or maybe he did it, I don't remember. But we essentially did a Lord of the Rings feast where everybody just brought a piece, and it was like rolls, and you were supposed to eat like the dwarves in The Hobbit. And so we were throwing food at each other. Yeah. But there was something lacking, because even though we weren't using utensils to eat the food, because that was the point, we were still eating off of like Corel. Right?
Oh, sure.
Instead of wood or
metal plates or something
like that.
Yeah. Well, one of my all-time favorite movies is Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And they serve food on like metal plates and stuff. And I think Flying W Ranch does that. And so I was like, oh, this is my Seven Brides for Seven Brothers moment. I literally had my mom buy me a metal plate that I could just put all my food on and consume.
That's awesome.
It never tasted right.
Yep.
And I was like, I want like beans.
Right. Just throw some beans and a chunk of meat and some sort of bread. I don't even really
eat beans, but I want it on this plate. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's another one of yours?
Kind of a mix of a couple things from the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. He talks about chowda wraps. I don't know how to say it because I've only read it.
Yeah.
But they're essentially like fried flatbread with like a meat and corn meatball inside. And they're like an on-the-go meal, right? You don't have to use silverware or anything, and it's supposed to be flavorful with spices but not spicy. And so that's one of them that they talk about a lot, because they'll just have like a chowder wrap that they just eat and pull out of a pack or something, which sounds really great, and some people have recreated the recipes. And they look really interesting.
We could try that.
And then the other one, which is definitely sensationalized in the book, and specifically the Stormlight Archive, is there's a character named Rock who's a horn eater from the mountains, and they're just very mountainous people, which I can relate to because they talk about airsick lowlanders because they have too much oxygen. Which just sounds great.
That sounds like where we live.
I know.
Yeah.
And they also are very flavorful in their foods. And so Rock makes this stew every night from whatever they can gather.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of all of Stormlight is this. It's essentially underwater without being underwater. Like
Okay.
their cows are choles who are basically huge crabs.
Okay.
Like everything's sort of a crustacean, right?
Okay.
But they're not underwater. That's just sort of thematically
Sure.
true about the planet. And so it's this sort of like seafood stew
Okay.
with all of the herbs and everything they can find around them and
Yeah.
whatever little creatures they like, kremlings is what they call them.
Yeah.
Like throwing kremlings in there and things like that. And
Just a seafood stew.
he describes it as it's something that only Rock can achieve because he was born to be a cook, blah, 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 blah. Right. But that whenever anybody else tries, it's just awful in comparison because they have this thing in their mind of how good it was.
Yeah.
And it's also associated with the camaraderie that the Bridge 4 has with that stew. And so even if somebody was to get close to the recipe, in their heads, it's associated with that time. And so there's this bit of nostalgia. And so even just in the description of it, it's this like unachievable, beautiful stew.
Yeah.
That just sounds so good.
It just lends me to the other day. I was considering like, oh, what meal could I make for Whole30? And I was like, oh, I bet you jambalaya would work. And then I was like, no,
rice.
And I was so sad. And also what's so interesting about the like flatbread one that you mentioned, maybe you can help me figure this out. You were like, okay, it's like this flatbread with meat and corn. And I was like, on board. But the moment you told me it was a meatball, like something about the spherical shape turned me off of it. Like I don't love meatballs. I don't know why. But if you just like flatten it out, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
But if it's a meatball,
no, it's totally fair. I think
know.
the reason that they're meatballs is because it's supposed to be easier to put together and to
carry with you,
store with you. And so the ball, you can have like a chowder wrap with one ball or several or whatever, right? They do look weird. I'll show you a picture after we're done recording. They do look, I don't think you're too off for being off-put by the ball part.
I think it's just weird. Okay, well, speaking of off-putting.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else will agree with me, but I think it's because of what you're saying with like your memory.
Yeah.
Being attached to what you're reading. Okay. The Help.
Okay.
The book The Help or the movie The Help. I did actually read that one. It's so good. Fudge pie. Obviously
that's
you're not supposed to want it after that, but I do because my great aunt makes a really good fudge pie without the poop in it, obviously.
If you haven't read the book, go do that.
And that's where, like, I'm saying
so
my
funny.
Memory is jumping to, ooh, fudge pie. Yum. But
so
in the
funny.
book, you're like, gross.
That's amazing. Oh, I one other that is just sort of a random commented on food type thing is from Game of Thrones. The Brothers of the Night Watch, they're up in the north and it's super cold and they go on ranger trips every once in a while, so they're basically camping. But one of the guys is known to bring along cloves and other spices and throw them into a pot with wine, and they call it spiced wine. And I looked it up after reading Game of Thrones because I hadn't heard of that and didn't know if it was a real thing. And it turns out that it's a way to make old wine that doesn't taste very good taste good and to be able to consume it. And so we've done it before.
And what we learned was
don't put so much anise in it because it's really bad. It just tastes like bad licorice. Yes, but I did make it once where it was good. And you just throw cinnamon sticks in there and anise star and cloves and
I want to try it again.
Yeah, I want to try, but it was one of the few successes of converting a food from a book to real life. It was a success. Now, I currently have a horn goblet, which you got me for Christmas, which I feel like will really make the difference.
Yeah.
So next time, I think it's going to be really good. But that was one where he's describing this, and especially the whole chapters are about how cold it is and how miserable it is.
Mhm.
And then there's this glimmer of warmth and comfort from the spiced wine.
Yeah.
And I think maybe this is part of the problem why it's always a failure is the food isn't always just a food, right? It's
Mhm.
associated with certain concepts. Like
Mhm.
I think with Joe and Lori, there's this sort of flirtatious,
Mhm.
friendly element
Yeah.
that gets tied into the food, but I don't think you can taste that
Mhm.
anywhere else than reading it.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot of books by an author named Sarah Adams.
Okay.
And the first book I read from her was When in Rome.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And in the book, the main lead male character owns a pie shop.
Mm.
And so throughout the book, he's making a whole bunch of pies, and his love interest like helps him make pies eventually.
Yeah.
It's not all about the pies, obviously, but he owns a pie shop. It's his job.
Sure.
Um,
Somebody's going to read that book and be like, why isn't this more about pies?
I was promised pies. Well, anyways.
It's like a tertiary theme at best.
Seriously. Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, as we've been on Whole30, I've been keeping a list of things that I want to consume once we're out of jail, essentially. And one of the things is a pie from his bakery, and it is a vanilla bourbon apple pie.
Oh.
And it sounds so good. Have I had that in my life? No, I have not. But I have had vanilla bourbon rooibos tea.
Oh.
And it smells so good that I'm like, oh, add some apples in that. Make it a pie. I think that sounds
tea,
amazing.
I think, smells better than it tastes.
You just need sugar. And I promise you it'll taste as good as it smells.
Great, I'll try it.
But we can't have sugar right now.
Once we get to that point in life.
But yeah, pie. So fudge pie? Vanilla bourbon apple pie.
You want a pie.
I do. I want pie. Yeah.
I think an honorable mention is green eggs and ham.
Oh, yeah. Why did I even think of that? Did you? No, you didn't go to real school.
Thanks for that.
During Dr. Seuss week at my elementary school, in the school lunch line, they would serve green eggs and ham.
Would they really?
But really, most of the time, the ham was the green thing, and it just didn't look appetizing.
Oh, no, not at all. No, it looks, because it ends up looking a moldy green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That pulled something out of my memory that I don't think I really wanted to think about.
Again, it's one of those things where you have the taste in your head. And you know for a fact that if I gave you a fried egg and a slab of ham.
Yeah, it wouldn't taste the same.
It wouldn't taste good.
I'm not a big fan of like uncooked yolks.
Yeah.
And yet, when I think about green eggs and ham,
it has to be.
I'm like, oh, obviously.
Yeah.
But it would taste different than if you gave me that IRL.
Yep.
Ugh,
okay, so here's my last one.
Okay.
Milk and honey from the Bible. Whenever God is talking about
locusts?
like locusts too, but he gets to dip it in honey. The daughter and I are going to try that one of these days because she's interested too.
I want to try manna.
Well, yeah, but you can't make that. I guess that's true. Okay.
You're right. You're right.
No, it's fine.
I can't.
It fits the category of the episode. It's fair. Anyways, whenever they talk about the land flowing with milk and honey, especially as a kid, I didn't understand that was symbolic of having green pastures for the cows and flowers for the bees, and that it was a land of plenty, and that was...
Someone's learning right now.
Somebody's learning that right now, right? Yeah. I thought it was literally, they're going to go to this place and they're going to have milk and honey.
Yeah.
And again, one of the rare exceptions, I remember as a kid pouring a bunch of honey into a cup of milk and realizing, you know what, this probably needs to be warm, and warming it up. And it tastes very good. So if you ever want to make, I don't know if it's good for you.
Honey milk.
It's
warm
just
honey milk.
It's warm honey milk. It doesn't sound good that way. But I don't know, in my head, it was built up and did it, and it tasted great.
Well, it just makes me think about like eating honey from Winnie the Pooh.
Oh yeah, nothing will ever compare.
Like sticking your hand in the jar and eating honey. That sounds so good.
Yeah, the honey in Winnie the Pooh is not honey.
Yeah.
Right? I've never had honey that tastes anything like that.
No.
but I know the taste of Winnie the Pooh honey.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, my last one is really more of a plug for the book than it is for the food, but the
Oh,
food
okay.
is a big part of it. But one of my recent favorite books is by Francine Rivers, and it's called The Lady's Mine, and it is such a good book. If you have not read it, read it. Oh my gosh, it's just so good. In the book, it's like gold mining time, and so it's small little communities, and the woman in the story just can't cook to save her life. So she goes to a diner every morning and they cook her like the most amazing country breakfast that you would ever want, like biscuits and bacon and pancakes and maybe a steak or something, but just like really country breakfast, maybe some grits or something. Breakfast number one is like the way to my heart. I just love breakfast foods, especially savory breakfast foods. And so when she's consuming that, I'm like, oh, I need to make a big breakfast soon.
That sounds great.
But yeah, highly recommend that book.
I think we will definitely have to come back and do a part 2 or maybe 3.
I'll need to like read some more.
We'll do some more research, go through our library.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find a magic site that gives you all the foods mentioned in books. I would love that site. If somebody wants to make that, that would be great.
Does that exist?
No, not that I found. Maybe it does. If it does, please let us know.
It's probably on Reddit. It's probably just like a thread of like, let's talk about the food.
I should have looked there. Yeah, I'll look there after. We'll talk about it in episode 2. If you have ideas of foods and books, please comment.
Not movies, even though I did that once.
If it has a movie
it has
based
to have
on the book, you can mention that it had a movie, even if that's what you're actually referring to.
Yeah, because I thought about one where I was like, I don't actually know if I remember reading this in the book, because I did read the book and I did watch the movie, and it's Crazy Rich Asians.
Okay.
And when they're in that market, like eating all of the like
street food.
Yeah, all the street food.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if that was in the book, and I don't know if I'd recommend the book because it was a little spicier than the movie, and it was like kind of gross spicy. So yeah, I don't know that I'd recommend that one. But the movie was so good, and the food that they showed in the movie, I was like, Trevor would love this. I don't know that in real life I would actually love that, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah, in your head it works.
Yeah, in my head it tastes really yummy.
And my edification for today is that I think that anytime that I have a picture of you in my head that feels all pumped up, that feels all pumped up and like it's this romanticized version of you, I consistently find myself in moments with you where the real thing is actually way better.
Oh, that's sweet.
Thanks.
That's good. I agree that's
you're better in person.
Yeah, I do. I do think I'm a better person, but no, that like as many of the romanticized visions in my head of times that we spent together, being with you is much more meaningful and potent and so good.
Love you, babe.
I love you.